I would rather choose a stranger with a kind heart than spend my life belonging to someone who never saw me as a person. The words echoed through the ancient halls of Moonvale Temple, leaving hundreds of wolves frozen in silence. The claiming ceremony was supposed to be a celebration of destiny, a sacred tradition where omegas were matched with powerful alphas from respected families. But for Sophia Bennett, it felt like standing at the edge of a life that no longer belonged to her. Beneath the glow of crystal lanterns and the silver light pouring through the temple windows, Sophia stood among the other omegas wearing a simple white ceremonial dress. Her fair skin, gentle features, and calm expression made her appear delicate, but beneath that softness was a strength most people never noticed. For years, she had been told what an omega should be: quiet, obedient, grateful for whatever future was chosen for her. But Sophia had never believed that kindness meant surrendering her own dreams. Around her, influential alpha families waited for the selection to begin. They looked at the omegas like names written on a list, searching for the choice that would benefit their clans the most. Sophia felt their eyes moving across the room, measuring status, family, and reputation. She knew what they saw when they looked at her. A simple omega from a small territory. Someone without a powerful bloodline. Someone easy to overlook. Sophia Bennett, the elder announced, her voice carrying through the temple. Step forward. The entire hall became quiet. Sophia slowly walked toward the center, knowing that once the ceremony continued, her future might no longer be her own decision. The alpha families had already discussed their preferences. They had already imagined where she would belong. But nobody had asked what she wanted. Nobody had asked if she was ready. A powerful feeling rose inside her chest. Not anger. Not fear. Something stronger. The desire to choose her own path. Before anyone could speak again, Sophia turned away from the ceremony. Gasps filled the temple. Whispers followed immediately. She cannot leave. An omega does not reject tradition. Does she truly think she has a choice? But Sophia kept walking. For the first time in her life, she ignored the voices telling her who she was supposed to become. Outside the temple, the cold evening air surrounded her as she walked through the quiet streets of Moonvale. The celebration continued behind her, but she no longer heard it. She only heard her own heartbeat. Then, near an old stone bridge at the edge of the city, she noticed someone sitting alone beneath the fading lantern light. A man wearing worn clothing sat quietly, his head lowered as people passed without stopping. They saw only a beggar. Someone forgotten. Someone without importance. Sophia slowed her steps. Something about him felt different. Even from a distance, she noticed the calm dignity in the way he carried himself. When their eyes met, she saw silver-gray eyes filled with a quiet sadness that did not match the life people assumed he had. You should keep walking, the stranger said softly. People usually do. Sophia looked at him for a moment, then stepped closer. She did not see a beggar. She saw someone the world had abandoned. And without knowing that this single choice would change the fate of an entire kingdom, Sophia Bennett offered the one thing nobody else had given him: a chance to be seen. The quiet streets of Moonvale felt different after the claiming ceremony ended. While the rest of the city continued celebrating beneath the glow of lanterns, Sophia Bennett walked away from the only future everyone had prepared for her. She did not know where the road would lead. She only knew that returning to a life where her choices did not matter was something she could no longer accept. Near the old stone bridge, the stranger remained exactly where she had found him. The man who everyone ignored sat beneath the fading light, watching the river move quietly beneath the wooden path. Sophia approached slowly, holding a small bag of food she had purchased from a nearby market. The stranger looked up, surprised. "You came back," he said. His voice was calm, but there was a hint of disbelief hidden beneath it. Sophia offered him the bag. "You looked like you needed someone to stop." He looked at the food, then back at her. Most people see what they expect to see. Sophia tilted her head slightly. And what do they see? A faint sadness crossed his expression. Someone who has nothing. Her answer came without hesitation. Having less does not mean having less worth. For a moment the stranger said nothing. It was a simple sentence, but it carried a meaning he had not heard in a long time. He introduced himself as Evan. He did not share much about where he came from, and Sophia did not push him for answers. She understood that everyone carried stories they were not ready to tell. Over the next few days, Sophia continued visiting him. She brought food, shared conversations, and helped him find a warmer place to rest near the edge of Moonvale. The city noticed quickly. And as always, the city judged quickly too. Whispers followed her through the streets. She walked away from a proper claiming ceremony for him? An Omega choosing a stranger with no family name? She must have lost her sense. Sophia heard every word, but she refused to let those voices decide her actions. What surprised her was not the criticism. She had lived with judgment her entire life. What surprised her was Evan. The man everyone called worthless carried himself in a way that felt impossible to ignore. He spoke with patience. He listened carefully. He treated everyone with respect, even those who dismissed him. There were moments when Sophia caught glimpses of someone hidden beneath the simple clothes. When a group of merchants argued about a decision, Evan calmly offered a solution that brought everyone together. When elders discussed old traditions, he knew details that even they had forgotten. He never demanded attention, yet people naturally listened. One evening, while they watched the sunset beyond the hills, Sophia finally asked, "Who are you really?" Evan looked toward the distant mountains. For a moment, his silence revealed more than words could. Someone who left behind a life that no longer felt like his own. Sophia studied him carefully. She sensed there was a story hidden behind those silver-gray eyes. A story much bigger than a man sitting beneath an old bridge. But she also understood something important. Whatever he was hiding, whatever he had lost, he was still a person who deserved kindness. And Evan, the stranger who had expected the world to look away, began to wonder if Sophia was the first person who truly saw him. The days after Sophia Bennett left the claiming ceremony became the subject of endless conversation throughout Moonvale territory. Some called her brave. Others called her foolish. But Sophia no longer measured her choices by the opinions of people who never tried to understand her. Every morning, she returned to the old stone bridge where Evan waited quietly beneath the lanterns. The world still saw him as a forgotten stranger, but Sophia saw something different. She saw a man who carried invisible burdens. She saw someone who had lost his place in the world, but had not lost his kindness. Evan, however, still struggled to understand her. He had spent years surrounded by people who wanted something from him. Respect, influence, protection. Yet Sophia asked for nothing. She did not care about his past or the secrets hidden behind his silver-gray eyes. She only cared about the person standing in front of her. One evening, as the sun disappeared behind the hills, Evan watched Sophia help an elderly shopkeeper organize supplies after a long day. She smiled, even though she had spent hours working without expecting anything in return. "Why do you do that?" Evan asked when they walked home. Sophia looked at him. "Do what?" "Give so much when nobody gives anything back." She thought for a moment before answering. "Because someone has to be the person who chooses kindness first." The words stayed with him. Evan had heard many speeches from powerful leaders. He had listened to promises made in grand halls. But a simple sentence from Sophia carried more meaning than all of them combined. The next day, the Moonvale Festival began. The streets filled with music, lanterns, and visitors from different territories. Sophia knew attending would bring attention, but she refused to hide. She walked beside Evan through the crowded streets, ignoring the whispers around them. Some people stared. Some laughed quietly. They could not understand why an Omega who had rejected a traditional path would choose to stand beside a man with no name or status. Near the center of the festival, Marcus Whitmore appeared. He was one of the alphas who had expected Sophia to accept the life chosen for her. His family carried influence throughout Moonvale, and he had always believed tradition should never be questioned. "Sophia Bennett," Marcus said, looking at Evan, "you truly abandoned a respected ceremony for this?" The nearby crowd became silent. Sophia felt the familiar weight of judgment return. But this time she did not feel alone. Evan stood beside her, calm and steady. Marcus continued, "You could have chosen someone important. Instead, you chose a man nobody knows." Sophia looked at Evan, then back at Marcus. A person's value is not decided by their name, their wealth, or the way others see them. The crowd listened carefully. A person shows their worth through their actions. For a moment nobody spoke. Evan watched her with quiet admiration. She was not defending him because she believed he was secretly powerful. She was defending him because she believed every person deserved respect. Then something unexpected happened. The connection between them felt different, almost like the moon itself had noticed the choice she had made. Evan looked away, hiding the surprise in his expression. He knew ancient stories about bonds that appeared only when two souls recognized each other without judgment. But he never expected it would happen with someone who had no idea who he truly was. Sophia simply smiled and continued walking beside him. She did not know that the man everyone ignored was connected to the highest throne in the kingdom. She only knew one thing. When the world looked away from him, she chose to see him. The morning after the Moonveil festival, Sophia Bennett noticed something had changed. The city looked the same. The streets were still filled with merchants, families, and travelers passing through the territory. But the way people looked at her was different. Some were curious, some were confused, and some were still waiting for her to regret the choice she had made. Sophia ignored the whispers and continued her routine. She visited the market, helped the local healers, and spent time with Evan near the old stone bridge. But every day, she noticed more signs that the man beside her was not ordinary. Evan never searched for attention, yet people naturally listened when he spoke. He never demanded respect, yet others seemed to feel it without realizing why. There was a quiet authority in his presence that could not be hidden by simple clothing. One afternoon, while Sophia and Evan walked through the forest paths outside Moonveil, she finally asked the question that had been waiting in her mind. Evan, why does it feel like you have lived a completely different life than the one you show people? He became silent. The wind moved gently through the trees, carrying the scent of pine and wildflowers. Because sometimes the life people see is not the life they need to know, he answered. Sophia studied his expression. She could tell he was protecting a secret, but she did not feel betrayed. Everyone had a part of themselves they were afraid to share. I do not need you to tell me everything before you are ready, she said. But I hope you remember that you do not have to carry everything alone. Evan looked at her with surprise. Those words touched a place in him that had remained untouched for a long time. He had spent years surrounded by people who saw his position before they saw him. Yet Sophia continued to see the person beneath the mystery. Meanwhile, far beyond Moonveil, the Northern Territories were searching for their missing ruler. The absence of the Alpha King had created uncertainty throughout the kingdom. Royal messengers traveled between territories, carrying a simple description of the man they were looking for. A leader with silver-gray eyes. A presence impossible to forget. A person who had disappeared without explanation. As rumors spread, Sophia noticed Evan becoming quieter. He watched the mountains more often. He seemed to be preparing for a moment he did not want to arrive. One evening, beneath the fading light of the sunset, Sophia found him standing alone near the river. You are leaving, she said softly. Evan turned toward her, surprised by how easily she understood him. I might have to. A sadness appeared in her eyes, but she did not ask him to stay. Then promise me something. What? Do not forget the person you were when nobody knew your name. Evan looked at her for a long moment. No one had ever spoken to him that way. Not as a ruler. Not as a symbol. Just as a person. He wanted to tell her everything. He wanted to explain why the world was searching for him, and why his true identity had to remain hidden. But he was afraid. He was afraid that the moment she learned the truth, she would no longer see Evan. She would only see the Alpha King. As the moon rose above Moonveil, the secret he had protected for so long became harder to hide. The stranger Sophia chose was carrying a destiny far greater than she imagined. And soon, the world would discover that the quiet man beneath the old bridge was not forgotten at all. The days that followed in Moonveil carried a strange feeling of waiting, as if the entire territory was holding its breath for something that had not yet arrived. Sophia Bennett noticed it in the way people watched the roads more often. She noticed it in the conversations that stopped whenever Evan walked nearby. And she noticed it in the quiet distance that had grown behind his silver-gray eyes. Evan was still the same person who sat beneath the old stone bridge. He still helped others without asking for recognition. He still listened when people spoke. But now Sophia could see the weight he carried becoming heavier. One morning while they walked through the market, A group of travelers arrived from the Northern Territories. Their clothing carried the symbol of the royal family, and their presence immediately changed the atmosphere of the city. Everyone knew why they had come. They were searching for the missing Alpha King. Sophia watched as the travelers spoke with local leaders, describing the ruler they were trying to find. A man with silver-gray eyes. A man whose presence could not be mistaken. A man who had disappeared without explanation. Her heart became quiet for a moment. She looked toward Evan, who stood a short distance away, watching the conversation with an expression she could not understand. Later that afternoon, Sophia found him near the river. The sunlight reflected across the water as he stood silently, lost in thought. "You knew they would come eventually," Sophia said. Evan looked at her. This time he did not pretend he did not understand what she meant. "Yes." The honesty in his answer surprised her. "Why did you stay here if you knew the truth would come out?" she asked. Evan looked toward the mountains. "Because I wanted one moment where someone could know me without knowing my title." Sophia felt a sadness in his words. She understood what it meant to be judged before being understood. She had lived that reality her entire life. "Evan," she said gently, "a name does not change who you are." He looked at her. "What if it changes how everyone sees me?" Sophia paused before answering. "Then those people never truly saw you in the first place." Her words reached him deeply. But before he could respond, the arrival of the royal messengers brought the entire city together. The announcement was made throughout Moonvale. The Alpha King had been missing for weeks, and the search had now reached every territory. The crowd gathered in the town square, filled with curiosity and questions. Among them was Marcus Whitmore, who watched Evan carefully. Unlike others, Marcus did not only see a simple traveler. He noticed the confidence, the calm expression, and the way people naturally paid attention when Evan spoke. Something about him did not make sense. Sophia stood beside Evan, unaware that the truth she had been waiting to understand was closer than ever. Evan looked at the crowd and then at her. For the first time she saw uncertainty in his eyes. Not fear of losing power. Not fear of losing a crown. Fear of losing the one person who had known him before either existed. "Sophia," he said quietly, "there is something I need to tell you." She looked at him with patience, not pressure. "Then tell me when you are ready." And in that moment, Evan realized something he had not expected. The hardest part of hiding his identity was not protecting the secret. It was knowing that one day he might have to reveal it and risk losing the person who had believed in him when the entire world looked away. The moment Evan finally decided to reveal the truth, the entire world around Sophia Bennett seemed to become quieter. The sounds of Moonvale disappeared behind the weight of the secret that had been hidden for so long. They stood near the old stone bridge where they first met, the same place where everyone else had seen only a forgotten stranger, but where Sophia had seen a person worth saving. Evan looked at the river beneath them, gathering the courage to say the words he had avoided for weeks. "My name is not Evan." Sophia remained silent, allowing him to continue. "The name I gave you was part of the life I was hiding." He turned toward her, and for the first time, she saw the uncertainty of a man who had carried responsibility for too long. "My true name is Alexander Whitmore." The name alone changed the atmosphere around them. Sophia had heard it before. Everyone had. Alexander Whitmore was the Alpha King of Silverfang Kingdom, the ruler whose decisions influenced every territory across the land, the man who stood at the highest place in their world. Yet the person standing before her was still the same man who had accepted a simple meal from her beneath a bridge, the same man who had listened when nobody else did. Sophia looked at him carefully. "You are the Alpha King?" Alexander lowered his eyes slightly. "Yes." He waited for the reaction he had seen countless times before. Surprise. Fear. A sudden change in the way someone looked at him. But Sophia only looked thoughtful. "Why did you hide it?" she asked. Alexander took a slow breath. "Because I needed to know if anyone could see me without the crown, without the title, without the expectations that follow me everywhere." Sophia remembered the first day they met. She remembered the loneliness in his eyes. She remembered how easily the world had ignored him. "Then I am glad I met you before I knew your name," she said softly. Those words meant more to Alexander than any royal celebration. For years, people had respected the position he held. They had admired the symbol of the Alpha King. But Sophia had respected the person before she knew the power behind him. Before Alexander could say anything else, the truth reached the people of Moonvale. The royal messengers announced that the missing ruler had been found. The crowd gathered as Alexander stepped forward, no longer hiding behind worn clothing and a simple name. The presence everyone had sensed but could not explain was finally clear. He was not a traveler. He was not a forgotten man. He was the Alpha King. The same people who had laughed when Sophia stood beside him now watched in silence. Marcus Whitmore stood among them, unable to hide his surprise. The person he had judged as insignificant had been the most important man in the kingdom. But Alexander did not look at the crowd. He looked only at Sophia. Because when the world had ignored him, she had offered kindness. When others cared about what he represented, she cared about who he was. Sophia finally understood the truth she had felt from the beginning. She had never chosen a man because of his status. She had chosen him because of his heart. And Alexander realized that the person who saved him from loneliness was the one person he never wanted to lose. The return of Alexander Whitmore to Silverfang Kingdom changed everything. But for Sophia Bennet, the most important thing remained the same. He was still the man who sat beneath the old stone bridge. He was still the person who listened when she spoke and accepted kindness when the world offered him nothing. The crown on his head did not erase the memories they shared before anyone knew his name. Inside the grand halls of the royal palace, however, not everyone saw things the same way. The nobles gathered to welcome their Alpha King home, but their attention quickly turned toward the woman standing beside him. Sophia could feel the questions before anyone spoke them. She had spent her entire life recognizing that feeling. The feeling of being judged before being understood. An Omega from Moonvale cannot represent this kingdom, one noble said carefully. The position of Luna carries responsibility and tradition. The words were polite, but the meaning was clear. They believed Sophia was not enough. They saw her simple background. They saw the life she came from. They did not see the courage it took to stand alone when everyone told her to follow a path she did not choose. Alexander stood beside her, listening quietly. For years he had allowed people to speak about what a ruler should be. But he could not allow them to decide Sophia's worth based only on appearances. You are looking at her history, Alexander said calmly. But I am looking at her heart. The room became silent. He looked around at the people who had spent their lives measuring value through family names and influence. When I had no crown, no title, and no one knew who I was, she treated me with respect. His voice remained steady. She did not choose me because I was the Alpha King. She chose me because she believed every person deserved kindness. Sophia looked at him, remembering the first time they met. She never expected recognition. She never wanted a palace or a title. She only wanted people to stop judging others before knowing their story. Later that evening, Alexander walked with her through the royal gardens. The flowers moved gently beneath the moonlight, and for a moment, the world felt far away from the expectations of the court. Are you worried? He asked. Sophia smiled softly. About becoming Luna? She looked toward the trees surrounding the garden. Maybe a little. But I was already afraid once. I was afraid of a life where I had no choice. Alexander listened carefully. And now I know I can choose who I become. Those words reminded him why he admired her. Sophia did not need a crown to be valuable. She did not need a title to be strong. Her strength existed long before anyone recognized it. Across the kingdom, people who once laughed at her began to understand the truth. The Omega they ignored had been the only person who saw the Alpha King when he had nothing to prove. And Alexander knew that the greatest decision of his life was not becoming ruler of Silverfang Kingdom. It was trusting the one person who saw him before the world saw his crown. The days following Alexander Whitmore's return brought a new chapter to Silverfang Kingdom. But Sophia Bennet still found herself questioning one thing. How could a person who had been ignored for so long suddenly become someone the entire kingdom wanted to understand? Alexander reminded her that a title did not change who she was. But Sophia was beginning to discover something even more important. She was never powerless. She had simply never been given a chance to see her own strength. One evening, While walking through the ancient gardens behind the royal library, Sophia noticed something unusual. The flowers around her seemed brighter than before, and the quiet energy of the moonlight felt different whenever she was near. She reached toward a small plant that had lost its color, and a gentle warmth moved through her hand. Within moments, the leaves began to regain their natural beauty. Sophia stepped back in surprise. She had no explanation for what happened. "Did you feel that?" she whispered. Alexander, who had been watching from a short distance, looked at her with curiosity and wonder. He had heard stories from ancient records about a gift connected to the first Luna of Silverfang Kingdom. A gift that was not created through strength or power, but through compassion and connection. Together, they searched the oldest library in the kingdom, where generations of history were preserved within forgotten books. Among the ancient writings, they discovered the legend of a Luna whose greatest ability was bringing balance and hope to those around her. She was not remembered because she was the strongest person in the kingdom. She was remembered because she understood people when they felt lost. Sophia read the words quietly, almost unable to believe they described her. "I do not understand," she said. "Everyone always told me I was too gentle, too soft." Alexander looked at her with a calm smile. "Maybe they misunderstood the very thing that made you special." For years, Sophia believed her kindness was the reason people overlooked her. She thought being gentle meant being unable to stand among powerful figures. But now she understood. Her compassion was not something that made her weak. It was the reason people trusted her. It was the reason Alexander had chosen to reveal the truth to her. As the discovery became known throughout the kingdom, the opinions of many people began to change. Those who once believed in Omega could never guide others started seeing Sophia differently. They saw the patience she showed. They saw the way people felt heard when she spoke. They saw the quiet strength she carried without needing attention. Marcus Whitmore, who had once questioned her place beside Alexander, stood among those who finally understood their mistake. He had searched for power and status, but Sophia had shown something greater: the ability to change hearts. Later that night, Alexander found Sophia beneath the ancient moon trees where the silver light covered the garden. "Are you still afraid of what tomorrow brings?" he asked. Sophia looked toward the stars. "A little. But I am not afraid of being myself anymore." Alexander smiled. He had once believed destiny was about finding someone strong enough to stand beside a king. Now he knew destiny was about finding someone who reminded him that even a king was still a person. Sophia Bennett was not becoming important because she stood beside the Alpha King. She was important because she had always been someone worth seeing. The day of Sophia Bennett's Luna ceremony arrived beneath a sky filled with soft silver light, marking a moment that no one in Silverfang Kingdom would ever forget. The grand courtyard of the royal palace was decorated with thousands of lanterns, ancient symbols, and flowers from every territory, representing unity and a new beginning. For generations, the ceremony had been a symbol of tradition and power. But this time it represented something different. It represented a choice. Sophia stood at the center of the courtyard wearing an elegant white ceremonial gown, surrounded by the people who had once questioned whether she belonged. She remembered the day she walked away from the claiming ceremony in Moonvale. She remembered the whispers, the judgment, and the uncertainty she felt when she chose a path no one expected. Back then, she was only an Omega who wanted control over her own life. She never imagined that choice would lead her here. Across from her stood Alexander Whitmore, the Alpha King who had once hidden beneath worn clothing and a simple name. He wore the royal attire of his position, but his expression was the same as the man Sophia met beneath the old stone bridge. He was not looking at her as someone beneath him. He was looking at the person who had seen him before the crown. The ceremony began, but Alexander did not focus on the traditions surrounding them. He focused on the promise that brought them together. When he took Sophia's hand, the entire kingdom watched quietly. "Before anyone knew who I was, you believed I mattered," Alexander said. "Before anyone respected my title, you respected my heart." His words traveled across the courtyard. A true bond is not created by status, power, or expectation. It is created when two people choose each other without needing anything in return. Sophia felt the emotions of the journey they had shared. The lonely stranger beneath the bridge. The man who carried secrets behind calm eyes. the king who feared being seen only as a title. She realized that destiny had never been about becoming someone important. Destiny had been about discovering the value that was already inside her. As the ceremony continued, the people of Silverfang Kingdom finally understood what they had failed to see before. Sophia was not standing beside the Alpha King because she had been chosen by power. She was standing beside him because she had chosen him when he had nothing to offer except his true self. The same people who once questioned her now celebrated her. The same voices that once called her weak now recognized her strength. But Sophia remained unchanged. She still believed every person deserved to be seen. She still believed kindness mattered. She still believed that no one should be judged before their story was known. Later that evening, Sophia and Alexander returned to the old stone bridge where their journey began. The city lights reflected across the river, and the quiet moment felt like a reminder of everything they had overcome. "Do you ever miss the days when nobody knew who we were?" Sophia asked with a smile. Alexander looked at her warmly. "I miss the day when you chose me before you knew my name." Sophia smiled because she understood. The greatest part of their story was never the crown, the kingdom, or the titles they carried. It was the simple truth that an Omega who felt forgotten and a king who felt unseen found each other when they needed it most. And from that moment forward, the kingdom remembered one powerful lesson. The person who sees your heart before the world sees your value is the person worth keeping forever.